Welcome back to SleeplessRonin Plays. Today, we're going to learn how to play Battletech Alpha Strike. This is the larger, more unit battle version of Battletech. The more simplified, easier to play form of Battletech. The quicker to play form of Battletech. You'll definitely want to get a copy of the book I just displayed, the Commander's Edition of the Alpha Strike book. If you're interested in Alpha Strike, it's definitely worth getting. And if you jumped in on the Kickstarter, a lot of the stuff that comes in the Kickstarter is designed for Alpha Strike. These cards you'll get with every mech. They are Alpha Strike cards, as said so on the bottom of the card. Pretty muchly, they're very easy to use because you can simply sleeve them in order to mark on them. Then just use a wet erase marker and you can clean them right off. Even the legendary mech warriors that came in the booster packs, like Natasha Kerensky, came with their own Alpha Strike cards displaying their mech and their character cards. Character card for Natasha Kerensky, a 0-0 pilot, because that's fair. That card's used for Battletech, not for this. Then, of course, you have the Kerensky Direwolf with special rules on the back of it. Because, yeah, you need even more special rules if you're playing Kerensky, as if she's not powerful enough as it is. Let's keep looking at the Kerensky card. It's going to give us a lot of the information we need to play Alpha Strike. It shows us our ranges, our range modifiers, how much damage we do per range, the TMM, which is the target movement modifier, which we'll talk about in a little while, how far it moves in inches, because this game is played in inches, the battlefield roll, overheat value, or overheat damage value, and the armor and internal systems, special rules, critical hits. So, there's a lot of stuff on the card. What you'll also need is you'll need some dice representing movement, a measuring device, because we're no longer using hexes, we're using measuring devices, markers, some mechs you'll see on the battlefield, some terrain as I have set out. You also need some, you can use some larger dice for actually doing your attack rolls, instead of those tiny ones I use for movement. And that's pretty much all I need. Now, if you'll notice in the corner of the film, I've been showing off a little sheet like this. You can also, instead of using the wonderful cards they have, you can go onto the master unit list online. I'll throw a link down below, and you can create your own armies of mechs and use them. You can throw in their skills and everything else like that. It's actually kind of cool. And so this right here was a Novacat or a Star Plus Plus, or Star and 2 points I created, and I just used it in a battle, and it was a lot of fun. Let's just get into how we play the game. You're gonna see a lot of similarity to Battletech itself. Oh yeah, this is another measuring device you can use, a basic old tape measure. But for today, for visualization, I'm using this because this should be nice and easy to see. Like any good game of Battletech, every turn is broken into phases. And just like in Battletech, there's probably a card flying around on the screen right now that says, hey, go look at my Battletech video. You're going to be rolling initiative in the beginning. And like any good player, you're trying to seize the initiative. So I'm going to seize the initiative here and say, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my channel and like my videos. So we're going to represent our two sides with, again, 2 pairs of dice. I brought to the battlefield 2 heavy inner sphere mechs, an archer and a marauder, and I brought 1 clan mech, the Timberwolf, to the battlefield. Where again, we're not looking to play a fair game, we're just looking to explore the rules. So at the beginning of each battle, you roll off again for initiative. I'm using the Draconis Combined dice for the inner sphere and Jade Falcon for the clanner. Well, the inner sphere won with a 12, so they definitely are going to have the advantage in this first round, or this round of introduction. One of the important things I'm going to mention now before I actually get to moving the mechs is, since you can play Alpha Strike on a much larger scale with a lot more mechs, you can actually use what's called a rule for moving by lance, or by star, if you're playing clans. Where, let's say you have like 16 mechs on the field, you might choose to just move them by lance. You take a lance of 4 mechs you previously assigned, and it will move all of them together first. And you'll do this for each time you get a movement point. It just makes the game a little bit faster. If you look at one of the cards, which I'll throw one up on the screen, you will notice that the cards will have a movement value. None of the ones I'm using actually involves jump jets. If they do, they'd have a movement value that says inches J. You can choose to jump, and if you do, you get to ignore terrain, and so forth and so on, which is great. If you don't choose to jump, you can just move by normal. And things will cost extra inches to move through. Like if I want to go down this, it's going to cost me an extra inch to go down. Because I'm moving past terrain. Same thing through moving. For every inch of forest I move through is going to cost me an extra inch of movement. So essentially you have your movement speed through forest. Unless, of course, you're running along a road, then you're just fine. As long as your mech moves a minimum of 1 inch, you don't count as not moving, as stationary. A stationary mech will get an advantage to shooting, but it has a disadvantage for being easier to hit. You don't get to add your TMM, or your target movement modifier, right into your opponent's skill to shoot you if you are stationary. If you jump, you'll add an additional +1 to your TMM, but again, none of my mechs are going to be jumping today. You can also do what's called sprinting as a movement, and when you sprint, so let's take a look at the Marauder. The Marauder has a speed of 8 inches. If I was to sprint, I get to move 1.5 times that. I can go 12 inches. If I do so, though, I cannot fire I cannot make attacks in the attack phase. So we had the Inner Sphere win the initiative roll, so the Clanner is going to move first. The Timberwolf has a movement value of 10. The Clanner is kind of in an unlucky position, so I just threw the mechs on the battlefield. I really didn't pay attention where they're going to go, but I'm just going to show this. Yep. We'll take the Clanner approximately 6 inches to reach the woods. So he's got 4 inches more he can move. And he's going to go into the woods 2 inches. He's going to keep his facing as thus, because he doesn't want anybody to get behind him. Now the Inner Sphere mech's going to move. The Archer is going to actually choose to remain stationary. Oh, sorry. There are movement dice. I should explain the movement dice. They're white, black, red, and the game suggests using yellow, but I don't have yellow dice, so I'm using blue. So you use a white die, this die, to represent a normal movement. That's what my Mad Cat just did. You select the TMM number it has, and you place it down. So my Mad Cat has a TMM of 2, and he just gets a white die to note that he moved a standard move. The Archer is choosing to not move, so he uses a black die. He's setting it to a 6 to represent that his TMM is a 0. Then the blue would be representing sprinting, or the yellow, they say yellow, I use blue, would be a sprinting movement to represent you can't actually attack. And the red is if you jump. I'm going to have the Marauder move. Keep doing that backwards. Again, I'm doing this on purpose. You can move in any direction you want to, up to your movement speed. So the Marauder can move up to 8 inches. And then he can turn to face any direction he wants to at the end of his movement. The Marauder has a TMM of 1, so he just does that. And that's literally all we've done for the movement phase. Again, very simple phase. It's super simplistic. Then we go to the combat phase. The first thing you need to check in the combat phase is you check line of sight. You see what the unit can see from its vantage point on the table. You can usually go eye level, but I don't need to go eye level because it's fine. I left everything relatively flat. Then we need to see what's intervening. I'm going to have the the Timberwolf. Bad me, no Inner Sphere terms. The Timberwolf is going to target the Archer because he's easier to hit. The Archer is about 11 inches. And there is, from center mech to center mech, some woods in the way. Now, firing arcs are a little bit different than in Battletech. A simple firing arc in this game is, so long as the target is in front of the range ruler, that's front arc. So you just try to draw a line off the back of the base. Anything behind there is rear arc. Both my Inner Sphere mechs are obviously returning fire on the clan mech. So, we now look at what's called the SATOR. You'll remember Gator from the Battletech video. Again, check the card. SATOR is pretty much very similar. But instead of gunnery, we're just looking at skill rating for the S. So, my clanner has a SATOR of 3 to start with, because as we all know, clans are slightly better trained. Then we add the A, which is the attacker movement modifier. I did a normal movement, which is a +0. As long as I'm doing my normal ground movement, I don't add a modifier to my own ability to shoot. Notice this is different than in Battletech, where even a walk will affect you. But this is Alpha Strike, and now ground movement does not add as value to me. If I'm standing still, like the Archer is, I'll get a -1 to my attacker movement modifier. And if I jump, I have a +2 to my attacker movement modifier. So jumping is much more penalized on the attacking side in Alpha Strike. So now that I've dealt with the A in SATOR, I get to move on to the T, which is, of course, TMM, or target movement modifier. So I'm targeting the Archer, and he's a standstill. He has a value of 0. Again, 6 is representing 0 because nothing in the game is going to actually get a 6, I do believe. That's why they use a 6 to represent 0. So that's what he is. He's a standstill. So right now I'm looking at a whopping value of 3 to make my attack. Then we go to the O, which of course is always the other modifiers. Terrain, partial cover, heat, damage, blah, 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 blah. There's a whole list in the book. Again, when you're playing the game, you want to read it over. But we have woods. We're saying woods is in the way. So that's a +1 modifier. So there's woods. We've already declared there's woods between the archer and the Timberwolf, which is intervening terrain. And if woods are intervening or a mech occupies woods, it's or, so you don't get to add them together. It's a +1 to the target value. So now we're going from a 3 to a 4. We only need a 4 right now. Now we go to the R, which of course again stands for range modifier. Ranges in Alpha Strike are very regimented. There's no individual weapon ranges. Since this whole game is an abstraction of the Battletech game, ranges are simple. Is it under 6 inches? It's short range. That's the S. Is it between 6 inches and up to 24 inches? That's your medium range. Yeah, that's a really big, that's a big range block. And is it from 24 to 42? That's your long range bracket. So essentially, you can play this on a really big table, and a lot of weapons can go really far. By abstracting out like this, though, it also makes it very interesting. They kind of balance the clan and the Innisphere weaponry a little bit better. It's really odd, but by abstracting out the game, the Innisphere actually comes up and the clans go down in their power levels. Not saying clan mechs are not extremely powerful. They are, but they tend to be a little bit weaker than their actual Battletech counterparts. For one thing, just possessing an XL engine halves your internal structure. It doesn't matter if it's a clan XL engine or an Innisphere XL engine. Having an XL engine means you have less structure. That's really, really bad. So that's why if you'll notice, both of my Innisphere mechs, because they're the 3R and the 2R, are both, I do believe they're 3025 era mechs, are very, very strong internal structure. Whereas my clanner has only 4 points of internal structure because he has an XL engine. So it was more than 6 inches, but less than 24 because we measured it at 11 earlier. Remember back? So we know we're at medium range. Medium range, just like in Battletech itself, adds a +2. So we're now looking at 6s to hit. Here's the interesting thing. We only make a single attack for the range attack. That's it. We make one attack. So the clanner is going to grab his pair of Jade Falcon dice, and he's going to roll. He got a 7. So he hits. Now, if you're playing the standard Alpha Strike game without using any of the optional rules, I would simply do and mark in 7 points of damage on the archer's armor, which you'll notice is all of the armor the archer has. I usually don't advocate using special rules or optional rules in an introductory video, but there is one rule in Alpha Strike that I have to bring up, because this game, I honestly would never play under the base rules without using this optional rule. This optional rule makes the game a lot better. If you have the Alpha Strike book, this rule I'm talking about is called variable damage, and it is found on page 174 and 175. The variable damage does is it simply says that for every point of damage I would do, which according to the Timberwolf card will be 7, I would take a die, and I will roll that die. For every 1 or 2 I roll, I reduce the amount of damage I do by that point. So, let's take the roll. I'll grab a 7 dice for the Timberwolf. And I will notice that I rolled 3 1s. So, my Timberwolf will now only do 4 points of damage to the archer. The interesting note about the variable damage roll, or this is called the multiple damage rolls rule, is I can never do less than 1 damage. Provided I can do at least 1 damage on the range, I can't do less than 1 damage. So that means that my attacks will still do some value. But it also means that I just don't get to wipe away an entire mech. But there are some mechs out there that I have seen that can do like 10 damage in Alpha Strike. And that's enough to pick up an entire medium mech and just throw it off the table in one shot. And yeah, you want the game to play faster, but you don't want the game to play like 1 shot, 1 kill. You want the game to have some variability to it. So a mech should never do its full value. When you're playing Battletech, a mech never does all of its weapons every time it fires, always. So this gives it some variance, and I think this rule should not be optional. This should be a always include rule. So that's the way I play. I'll never play Alpha Strike without using the variable damage rule. So I'll take my archer card, and I'll mark in 4 points of damage. The archer's taken damage. Had I rolled a 12, I would have gotten to roll a critical hit. But I didn't roll a 12. So now, my Marauder will shoot, because I think I'm going to go with him next. He's at a skill of 4. He did ground movement, so it stays at a 4. My target, the Timberwolf, has 2 for TMM, so I'm at a 6. And I need a 7 for the woods. And because it's more than 6 inches away, I need a 9 all total. So, I take 1 pair of dice. I'm looking for that 9. Oh, I missed by 1. That's unfortunate. So the Marauder doesn't hit. So his whopping 3 points of damage goes nowhere. So now the archer's going to shoot. We know the archer, he's a 4, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. He needs an 8 to hit. But our archer hits. So the archer would do, at medium range, 3 points of damage. I grab 3 dice. And the archer only does 1 point of damage. Very unfortunate for him. Marking the 1 point on the Timberwolf. And we're done with shooting. There are still physical attacks in this, but again, if you sprinted, you can't make any physical attacks. In order to make a physical attack, with or without a melee weapon, because there are special ways of doing it with melee weapons, you must be within 1 inch of your target. So we won't be doing any physical attacks right now. We can move on to the end phase. End phase where we do heat management. And unfortunately, I didn't actually bother using any heat management in this battle. I could have. If a mech uses overheat values, they build up heat slowly on the heat chart until they shut down. There are a few ways to cool off. Being in water or just not firing any weapons is a way to cool off. Some mechs have an overheat value, like the Widowmaker, of up to 3. And they can choose, when they make their attack, you declare this before you make your attack roll, how much overheat value you want to apply. For every point of overheat, you would end up marking yourself up 1 point on the heat scale in the end phase, and you get 1 extra point of damage when you fire your weapons at the short and medium ranges only. It takes another special rule in order to get overheating at long range. So, let's say the Marauder had overheated. It didn't, but let's just pretend it has. If it did, it'd mark its heat scale 1 point, because it can only overheat 1. And that would have an impact on its next turn. On the next turn, you add your heat level to your firing modifier, so he would add a +1 to shooting. He'd have a harder time of hitting. If it's at heat level 2, I would also reduce my TMM by 1. So if the Marauder fired overheat 2 turns in a row, I would have a +2 to shooting, and I would not have my TMM of 1 anymore. You also subtract double your heat scale value. Again, we're talking just like 1, let's say. You double it, and that's the number of inches you no longer can move. So if the Marauder had a heat value of 1, its movement speed would drop from 8 inches to 6 inches. Overheating has an impact in this game much faster than it does in Battletech itself. If you ever get to the overheat value of S, you shut down. You're just kind of, boop, you're off. That's the bad one. That the immobilized one, that's the one you can be targeted easily. Just like in Battletech, being shut down is never a good situation to be in. So, that is a full turn of Alpha Strike. Let's do one more and go through it really fast. I'm just going to kind of play it out really quickly so I can show you how it goes. First thing we do is start with the initiative. This time it is won by the Clanner with a 9-4. And I think I said they were Karita dice earlier. They're Wolf Dragoons. So now, the Initiative Mechs, just like in Battletech, if I outnumber the enemy, I move more units, so I have to move both of my mechs in this one. This time the Archer is going to move. He's at a movement value 8 as well. So it takes me 1 inch to get to the edge of the thing. Then it's going to take me 2 more inches to get down, so I've used 3 inches. I go to there. So the Archer goes there, and he positions himself. Then the Marauder goes. He's not going to move as far, so he's going to move 5 inches, 6 inches, because of climbing up the hill. So he just goes to there. Both of these guys get to use their TMM of 1, and they're all good. Now, the Timberwolf knows that both of their guns are less effective at short range than at medium range. So he wants to close the distance. He's going to take, we'll say, 2 inches, 3 inches, 8 inches. He could move 2 more inches, but there's really no need to. He knows he's really point blanking on these guys to make them less damage effective. And that's his entire goal. He's barely taking any damage, so he's totally able to risk this. The Innisphere attacks first because it lost the initiative. The loser always goes first. Because everything simultaneous gives the advantage to the second player. So the Archer is going to attack. He's going to fire his weapons at the Timberwolf. So here we go. 4 plus 0 for ground movement. 5, 6 for target. Nothing for range. No force. So we're looking for a 6 for the Archer. Archer hits. Archer then rolls 2 dice. Only 1 point of damage. Then the Marauder goes. And the Marauder is a riskier pilot, so he's going to choose to overheat just because I can. He also needs the exact same value. He needs a 6 to hit. He misses. Poor Marauder, he just stinks today. He still goes up 1 on the heat. And then the Timberwolf is going to attempt to wipe an Archer off the table. So the Timberwolf is going to also choose to overheat, and he's going to fire away. He's 3, 4. That's all he needs to roll to hit. He needs a 4. Disgusting. Disgusting, it is what it is. He hits. So now he grabs 8 dice because he adds that overheat value, or the OV value of 1 to his attack roll. Ooh, that was lucky for the Archer. My dice rolling is pathetic today. 4 of those points of damage missed, so the Archer only takes 4. We still got exactly what we wanted. We wanted to roll for a critical hit. So once you get any point of damage into the internal structure, you get to roll for applying a critical hit. So it works a bit differently than Battletech. So there are 2 ways of getting critical hits in Alpha Strike. Rolling a 12 to hit, or by getting any internal structure damage. So now we've rolled the internal structure damage, we get to roll for a critical hit. We just take 2d6, we roll them, and we look at the critical hit table, which is found on page 50 of the Alpha Strike Commander's Edition book. I roll an 8. Weapon hit. You look at the Mech chart, and we see weapon hit is number 8. And we go down, we see what that means. This hit represents the destruction of a number of weapons of the affected unit. All damage values, including those of special abilities that have damage values, are reduced by 1 to a minimum of 0. The Archer now marks on its sheet, weapon hit. So he has 1 less damage at every range bracket now, which is very unfortunate for him. That's how critical hits go in Alpha Strike. Again, much more simplified over Battletech itself. And that's how this game would go. It's got more details to it, of course. It's a much faster game. Everything is abstracted out, which actually makes it pretty nice. And you can play with a lot of units pretty fast. It's a really fast version of the game of Battletech. I don't like it quite as much as Battletech, but I will say it's a great way to throw your entire collection on the table at once. I like them both. I like Battletech a bit more, but I do like them both. That is enough for this episode. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit like, subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you in the next video. SleeplessRonin out.